What would you do if the person you loved most disappeared without a trace, leaving only a cryptic note about an offer too good to refuse? That was the question I faced on the third night of our romantic getaway, a trip meant to rekindle the spark in our marriage. The cliffs of Cornwall, with their wild beauty and endless waves, were supposed to be our sanctuary. Instead, they became the backdrop of a mystery that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my husband, David, and the life we'd built together. We'd arrived at the quaint seaside cottage with high hopes. David had been distant for months, buried in work, his phone buzzing late into the night. I chalked it up to stress his tech startup was struggling, and the pressure was eating him alive. This trip was my idea, a desperate bid to pull him back to me, to us. The first 2 days were perfect. We laughed over wine, walked hand in hand along the shore, and made love under the stars. For the first time in years, I felt like we were whole again. But on the third morning, I woke to an empty bed. His suitcase was gone, his phone missing from the nightstand. On the kitchen table, scrawled in his hurried handwriting, was a note, "I'm sorry. Mom called with an offer too good to miss. I'll explain everything soon. Love, D." I stared at the words, my heart pounding. His mother, Margaret, had always been a shadow in our marriage, wealthy, controlling, and fiercely protective of her only son. She'd never approved of me, the small-town girl who stole her David. But an offer? What could she possibly have dangled that would make him vanish without a word, abandoning our trip, our promises? I called his phone, it went straight to voicemail. I texted, emailed, even called Margaret. No answer. Panic crept in, but so did determination. I wasn't going to sit and wait. David was my husband, and I would find him. The first clue came from the innkeeper, Mrs. Harrow, a wiry woman with sharp eyes who'd seen us arrive. When I showed her the note, her face tightened. "Margaret's got a house not far from here," she said, her voice low. "Big place, old money. Strange folk come and go there." She gave me the address, a sprawling estate hidden behind iron gates, 10 miles inland. My stomach churned as I drove the winding roads, the cliffs giving way to dense forest. What was David doing there? And why hadn't he told me? The estate was a Gothic monstrosity, all stone turrets and ivy-choked walls. I pounded on the door, my breath visible in the chilly air. A butler answered, his face impassive. "Mrs. Margaret is not receiving visitors," he said, but I pushed past him, calling David's name. The house was a maze of dark wood and heavy drapes, the kind of place that swallowed secrets. In the parlor, I found Margaret, sipping tea as if she'd been expecting me. "Emily," she said, her voice like ice, "you shouldn't have come." "Where's David?" I demanded. She smiled, thin and sharp. "He's safe. He's made a choice for his future, for our family's future." Her words were cryptic, but her eyes held a glint of triumph. She offered me tea, her politeness a mockery. I refused and stormed through the house, searching every room. No David. No answers. Just silence and the weight of her gaze following me. That's when the twist came, unexpected and sharp. As I left the estate, defeated, a young woman slipped out from the shadows of the gatehouse. She was no older than 20, with nervous eyes and a scarf pulled tight around her neck. "You're Emily, aren't you?" she whispered. "I'm Clara. I worked for Margaret." Her hands trembled as she handed me a folded piece of paper. "David gave me this. He said if you came looking, I should give it to you." My heart stopped. Another note? I unfolded it with shaking hands. It read, I didn't want to leave you. Mom's dear, it's not what you think. Meet me at the lighthouse at midnight. Trust me. Clara's story spilled out in a rush. She'd been Margaret's assistant, privy to her schemes. Margaret had lured David with a massive investment to save his failing company, but it came with a catch. She wanted him to leave me, to return to her world of wealth and control, to marry someone suitable for their legacy. Clara had overheard their arguments, David's refusal, and Margaret's insistence. He loves you, Clara said, her voice breaking. But she's relentless. She locked him in the guest wing last night to make him reconsider. The lighthouse. Midnight. I drove back to the coast, my mind racing. Clara's words had shifted everything. David hadn't abandoned Mena willingly. But why the secrecy? Why not tell me from the start? The lighthouse loomed against the stormy sky, its beam cutting through the fog. I climbed the spiral stairs, my heart in my throat. At the top, David was there, his face pale, his eyes wild with relief when he saw me. Emily, he whispered, pulling me into his arms. I'm so sorry. He explained everything. Margaret's offer was a bribe to save his company, but it meant signing away his freedom, agreeing to her terms, cutting me out of his life. He'd gone to her estate to confront her, to refuse, but she'd trapped him, threatening to destroy his business entirely if he didn't comply. The note he'd left me was a rushed lie, meant to buy time while he figured out how to escape her grip. Clara, risking everything, had helped him get a message out. We stood there, the wind howling around us, and I saw the man I'd fallen in love with flawed, but fighting for us. I couldn't lose you, he said, his voice breaking. Not for money, not for anything. But the danger wasn't over. Margaret's reach was long, and her obsession with control ran deep. We needed to leave, to disappear before she could tighten her hold. We fled that night, driving through the rain, no destination in mind, just away. Clara came with us, too scared to stay behind after betraying Margaret. In a roadside diner at dawn, we made a plan. David would sell what was left of his company, cut ties with his mother, and start over. It wouldn't be easy. Poverty loomed, and Margaret's wrath was a shadow we'd always carry. But as I looked at him, his hand in mine, I felt a quiet strength. We were together. That was enough. Months later, we settled in a small town far from Cornwall's cliffs. David took a teaching job, trading his tech dreams for a simpler life. Clara found work too, her courage blossoming into a new beginning. Margaret never found us, though I sometimes caught myself looking over my shoulder. The trip that was meant to save our marriage had nearly destroyed it, but it also showed me what love could endure. David's choice to fight for me, to defy his mother's empire, wasn't just about us. It was about choosing freedom, choosing truth, choosing each other. What does it mean to love someone? It's not just the easy moments, the laughter, and the stars. It's standing on a cliff in a storm, searching for them when they're lost, and holding on when the world tries to tear you apart. David vanished, but I found him not just in the lighthouse, but in the life we built after. And in that, I found myself too.